every time, and she looks so
She has to admit
excited.
herself.
No, I look at something else. My eyes see me, I'm just kidding.
Alright.
Okay, so here we go. Today is Monday, June 3rd, 2024. For the Curriculum and Learning Committee meeting, we're at the School District of Menominee Falls, Board of Education Curriculum and Learning Committee meeting. If I haven't said it once, I'll say it again. There is a possibility that a quorum of the full membership of the Board of Education would be in attendance at board committee meetings, including virtual meetings. There will be no full board action taken at any board committee meeting. Only members of the committee may vote on any item on the agenda. A live broadcast will be streamed on the school district YouTube page. To watch the recorded meeting, please visit the SDMF YouTube site. We're at the School District of Menominee Falls District Office, Conference Room 3344-3345 on Pilgrim Road. The meeting is called to order at 6:01 and it was properly posted.
Yes.
And, approval of minutes. Do I have a motion?
A motion to approve.
Okay,
I'll second.
I just need a quick look at them.
I looked at
No changes or anything, so very thorough. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Moving along, we have action items, AP Psychology textbook adoption.
Yes, so it is time for a new AP Psychology textbook, maybe past time by a little
Yeah,
ways.
well, I was waiting for the changes to get, I
Yes.
didn't think we should buy books before the changes went through, so.
Right, so yes, there are changes in the AP Psychology course, and Annie Gazelle, our AP Psychology teacher, is here to talk us through that just a little bit, and I've got the quote here as well.
Okay,
Perfect.
so, the biggest changes to the AP curriculum is more of a science-based, so they're more of, like a document-based question type scenario where they're using graphs and charts and things like that to, answer questions. So, more of a gears less towards the social science and more towards the science. So they've rearranged the units, they've taken some things out, they've added a couple terms in, but nothing too new. I brought these if you like. This is the AP CED, which is what we get from the AP that tells us what we have to teach. And there's been just a couple things that they've removed, and then a couple things that they've added. So I didn't know if you had any specific questions. You guys can keep that. I have another one if that helps.
Yes.
Yeah.
Take a look.
Yep, absolutely.
what was that called? I'm sorry.
It's the course and exam description. It's the document we get from AP that outlines all the objectives and learning targets. So, I mean, I've highlighted a couple of the bigger changes that I thought I could just bring up right away.
Yep.
So the first one would be the gender and sexual orientation unit. And what the College Board has done has removed it from being essential knowledge. I never taught it before, because it was rarely on the test, but it is in the book, but it's not required. Therefore would not be part of the curriculum. And the other thing that was changed that I noticed was, let's see here, so page number 77 in the spiral book, if you wanna look, you can look with me.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Isn't it funny, we all open the same page?
right, so really the only thing that talks about gender that I teach is just how we, learn like pink is for girls and blue is for boys. Those things, like we learn that through observation and things like that. So that's really all that's covered there. And the rest will be left off because it is not covered on the exam. And the only other major thing was some Freud was removed when it came to personality.
Okay.
So, they were kind of removing a lot of the history and the old guys. Nobody's really interested in them anyways, but they've kind of shortened that up and put more of the emphasis on the broader terms and the bigger ideas. There's less memorization of theory names, but more the idea that there's different ideas on how we see color.
Sure.
Those types of things. So those are the two big changes that I saw. Here's some of the smaller ones. I made a document for you. I kind of went through the old book and the new book, and just noted some of the changes that were made. They're pretty small in terms of just a term here, a term there.
It's natural for AP to update these courses
Right.
every so often.
The biggest thing is they've
These
shifted how they've organized and kind of clumped them together. There used to be 14 units, then it was 9, and now there's 5 plus a 0, so there's 6. So they've kind of condensed it a little bit.
And so part of your work this summer, you've got some summer curriculum hours to
Yeah.
dive into this
Mhm.
more deeply.
Right, to do the units by design and then to just rearrange the slideshows and add the updated terms, remove what we're not gonna have to cover anymore. All the tests and things like that will have to be redone. The test is going online next year, so I like to utilize the College Board's online testing, so they're familiar with that format. So they don't go in and it's not a familiar, testing situation for them. So the College Board would creates questions, all kinds of stuff. They have it for every AP course, and then there's a test bank there that you can help create tests from all the College Board questions and then align with all the learning objectives and the essential knowledge that they need.
My assumption is that you teach it to the test, right?
Our goal is to help them get those college credits. But I also kind of make it my goal, make sure that they're ready to go to college if that's their path. So lots of note-taking skills, test-taking skills, and we do a lot of reading so that they're familiar with college level reading.
Do you get to go through the entire book?
Well, except for yes, they read the whole book except for the spots that we've always skipped. The gender was in the last book, but we never read it. After I taught it for a couple of years, I noticed it never popped up on the test. And we're pressed to get through what we need to get through anyways, so,
You test in May and we start in September. Some
Right.
schools, everybody tests at the same time, but some schools start in August.
yeah,
So
right.
wanna
Gives
get
them a
that
little bit.
content done in time for the exam.
Right, and we always like to give them some time to review so that we can do some practice tests and things like that. Because it is a lot of content to remember for the entire year.
I like these little things, I don't know if they had it in the first edition, but the AP
I brought the
exam tip.
first edition in case you were curious. I'm gonna actually look.
I wondered if they had that, cause I do like that when I was looking through the AP science
Some of that is
practice,
new,
and then the exam tip.
yeah.
I noticed that
also
too, that
do
is really a nice update.
I just wanna learn enough.
Oh, they have some here.
I think it's nicer there though, like it's a bigger pull-out with examples. So they made some, I think, really nice changes,
I like
student-friendly
I like
changes.
these right here, cause it just brings your focus to basically the concept in that chapter, and then just make sure you understand what was talking about unit, so.
And how old is this
They're
version?
10 years,
10 years.
almost 10 years old.
Okay.
So we were up for
Looks
books
like it.
maybe 3 years ago and they had changed it from 14 to 9 units, but we could still kind of make it work, they were just skipping around a little bit. But I knew this bigger change was coming and I didn't wanna invest in new books until they had finally made up their mind. It's a lot of money.
Well, that's good, thank you.
Thank you.
It's a lot of money, like I get it.
Yeah.
Well, and AP does want us to have a textbook that's been published
Right,
within the
and this
last
is
10
the-
years, so
Yeah,
this
this
is-
would
this
have
is
been the
the
last
time.
year we could have used this one, so.
Right, okay. So
Right now-
this is very helpful too.
So with AP, do you get in general, do you get a certain textbooks you could pick out of?
This is the only one that's out that aligns, cause they made the changes in March.
Okay.
There's a couple others, and I did look, there's one that we used way back, by Cicerelli, but it's the same, they're all laid out pretty much
Yeah.
the same,
You might as well stick with what
right?
you've been working
Um,
with, it's been working well.
The kids seem to enjoy it, there's a lot of interesting little stories, at the beginning. It's not a very difficult text to read, which helps as well. So,
Do you have any other questions or observations?
So I looked at the invoice
Yeah.
here, and there were 90 quantities of the online and then 90 of actually textbook.
the kids don't like to read online. And I can say I honestly don't blame them. If we were concerned about cost, I would go with the books and forego the online.
I agree with that.
We've got room to do both.
What's the read on?
Yeah, it's an eye strain, but the online isn't just the book, it's also, there's activities, there's tests and quizzes that they can self-take, there's flashcards. And then when we have kids, like this year I had a student that was dyslexic, because we have kids that need text, read out loud, and they can highlight in the book, the online book. And it's nice for them to, I tell them to keep their book at home, because they don't use it, right? And it's heavy, and I don't know why they carry all those books around in their record bags, but that way they can use, if we need the book in class, they can pull it up online, or if they wanna do it in study hall, but then they have that book at home to do their reading at home,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay,
so,
so I was wondering the thought process behind having equal amounts of like the actual book and the online.
Yep,
resources.
so, the thing with the online book is you need a login, so each kid has to have their own login.
Okay.
And I think you get 7 years worth of logins for this, so, and then once all your logins are gone and your license is up. So we haven't had an online book for
A couple of years.
quite a few, 3 or 4 years.
Sure, because that it had expired.
Right,
10 years, yeah.
Which is why it would have come up about 3 years ago, because we typically time it, so it comes up as the license is expired.
Yeah, we did have
Possibly
it.
a year after if we have extras.
we had them all, yeah, but with the change that I knew was coming, I was just kind of waiting until they finalized that.
That's good timing.
It is.
And it makes sense for us to have both and we can afford it. So, I have no problems.
Okay, so how do I, what's the,
After the motion, yeah, the word.
So, I can read a suggestion based on previous language, and then you can tell me
Okay.
what you think edited.
Sure.
No, you guys can keep them if you'd like to, I mean, we'll be putting them in the unit by design, but yeah, I made them for you guys if you wanted to take a closer look. You're welcome. We did that, yeah.
It sounds like a little interesting story.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, I've been teaching it for 15 years, I think. Yeah, she was really well, yeah.
Do you want it to have a not to exceed number? We got the quote a couple months ago, so it should be accurate, but if we have the exact not to exceed number, it doesn't leave us wiggle room if the vendor has changed any price.
What is the total?
Right here. Is it the
It's,
17,000?
17,900.
Oh.
Sorry, keep scrolling.
Oh, and then there's
It's
a
on the
shipping.
very top of the second page.
Oh, 18,628.
Oh, gotcha.
Because the shipping is $700.
Yeah,
Well,
that's actually not
I'm
that
gonna
bad.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I'm gonna start going to these warehouses and picking up
Just run to you, road trip.
I feel like I
Road trip.
put a lot of money
Wow.
into
Yeah.
shipping and handling, unfortunately, so.
So you want the exact dollar amount, or do you want it, what
So she's gonna do like a.
She's asking if
Yeah, how
I'm
much
at-
commission do you want?
I'm asking what you would like. In the past, we have approved the textbooks, saying that we'll purchase according to the quote and go from there, cause typically the company will let us use the quote even though it's past like the 30 or 60 day time, but if they get particular and ask
Yeah,
us to
shipping might
re-quote
change.
it,
Yeah,
then there could be a slight change if they've upped shipping costs or anything like that.
okay.
So you could motion to approve the AP Psychology textbook and curriculum based upon the quote that was presented and continue with all the other language that we had, if you would like, it's up to you. Whatever you feel comfortable doing.
Is that-
I'm
I'm okay
comfortable
with
with that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so motion to approve the AP Psychology textbook and curriculum first. Do you want the 6 years in there, or would you like to leave the 6 years off on the chance that our licenses may last a little longer if we don't have 90 kids in the class every year? Those extra licenses stay.
Oh.
I would do that,
I would too. I mean, we average, I think this year I had a little over 70, but it's usually between 80 and 70 kids per year. So maybe by the last year, we'll have enough just to squeak out another extra year of online licenses.
Sure.
Okay,
Thank you.
So we're saying 7 years? Is that what?
or I can leave the years off, you're not required to
Oh.
have years on there. So I could do motion to approve the AP psychology textbook and curriculum, or the motion to approve the proposed AP psychology textbook and curriculum per the included quote. To ensure compliance and prevent curriculum drift, the C&L Committee shall conduct continued reviews throughout this contract. The reviews shall ensure that the approved curriculum maintains alignment with the board's approved and prioritized standards or any changes that may be made to these approved standards. These reviews shall ensure the curriculum maintains balanced content representing multiple viewpoints. The curriculum committee may take action at any time regarding these issues, including but not limited to revising, supplementing, and or removing.
I don't think it's because it's a core curriculum, I think we should just leave it off. If it extends, that just makes it more complicated, put a specific year on there.
Yeah.
I think we just leave the year off, that's my opinion.
That's a good
We know
suggestion.
we'll have to come back in 10 years
Yeah.
at a minimum,
A minimum, yeah.
Because it's not a core class, so I think we should just.
Do you want me to reread it, or?
No.
Sounds okay?
Yep, sounds good.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll motion.
I can second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Okay, motion passes.
You
Am I dismissed?
Yes, you are.
Thank
You got
you. You guys have a
your
good
first
night.
this time, so thank you
Thank
so much
you.
for coming.
Have a good night.
You too. Have fun with that book.
Did
you want these?
Yeah,
I had mine in already.
Or I can send them over.
Yeah, I had
email.
mine in.
I mean, they're
A few
heavy,
weeks
so
ago.
just.
Thank you.
Could you send me any handouts that you had? Yeah, like any papers that you give the board members, you don't have to give them to me now.
I have like, can I just give it to you now? 'Cause look at my bag.
Yeah, might as well, right?
Right?
Like your
Textbooks for handouts, yeah, we'll wanna post those.
I don't have an extra, I only have 2 of those, but
You
I
want
just.
this one? Is it this one?
Yeah, I have an extra
Okay.
one of those.
Alright.
Those are the changes from the old
I
to
think
the
we
new.
have
That was
the,
it, right?
the book electronically, right? The,
This one?
The salmon.
no,
The salmon.
your-
There's a
Yeah.
PDF that I can send you.
Yeah, okay, I'll shoot you an email, it's on
Okay,
my
great, thanks.
Okay, moving right along, we have elementary literacy update and recommendation.
Yes, so we're back, yes, we're here to talk more elementary ELA. So as you know, we have been using Heggerty phonemic awareness in grades kindergarten, first and second. We've been using it in 4K for a while, but kindergarten, first and second was new this year. And while we did it with everybody, it was still officially a pilot, so we wanted to revisit that and make a recommendation that we move forward with using this permanently. I think we talked a little bit about it last month, but this will be the action item to kind of formalize that. So Michelle Strupp is here, and I will have her share some information. I know one of the pieces that our timing was not so great on was the teachers are still entering their end of year data. So it was due today, so I don't know if Michelle had it, it looks like she has a little bit of data to share verbally with us, but we knew it was, they're still assessing and we're still teaching till the very last day, so so she'll have a verbal update on some data. So Michelle, why don't you start, and then I'm sure I'll jump in.
So the beginning is just a reminder of what phonological awareness is. So it's really that ability for that to manipulate sounds and units of our oral language, and the bigger units are like words and syllables, so we say that's phonological awareness. And the goal is really for students to be able to get down to the isolated individual sounds, which are the phonemes, and to be able to manipulate that. So that's just a reminder of what that is. It helps set them up for the graphings, the phonics, putting the letters to those sounds, but this is all auditory listening and being able to navigate that from how many words are in a sentence, how many syllables words have, down to if we say the word bat, they're able to like hear b, at, And then we play around with that and do games where we change the sounds either in the middle, well, in the beginning, middle, or end. So that's really what it's all about. That needed a little hurrah to it.
Give me the wink when you want the next.
Okay, I will, all right. And then this is just, Louisa Motes is a researcher in the area, and basically it's just research that shows us that this is really an essential building block in regards to students having or I should say just people, right, individuals having a sound base in phonological awareness. And again, like I said, the goal is to get down to those phonemes, those individual sounds. So when we have that, that really strongly correlates to helping students in their path and journey to become proficient readers and writers. So in regards to Heggerty and its curriculum, I just wanted to capture some of the things that it offers us, which are very powerful. First of all, it aligns to our Reading Foundational Skills Standard, RF2, across K2, and that's demonstrating an understanding of spoken words, syllables, and sounds. The scope and sequence in Heggerty also supports that developmental progression and complexity of phonological and phonemic awareness, so that's very powerful. So as we went through and compared the scope and sequence to that progression, it's hitting it across the board. They have those explicit and systematic lessons. It's short and sweet, we could say, right? It's supposed to be about 10 to 12 minutes, so real concise with that. There's about 6 to 8 skills that are taught daily, and then that kind of spirals, and they build on the complexity throughout the year and the weeks. There's explicit teacher language and examples provided for the teachers, so that helps in regards to how they're instructing and what they're saying to students. We can use that either in whole group, or we could also follow up and use it in small group if we're noticing that some students maybe are still grappling with specific skills. You can bring it back and be responsive in small group instruction with it also. Again, it's like that oral and auditory warm up to phonics, right? It's setting that foundation for them, and then you can start connecting it to the graphemes, to the phonics, the letter representation. And then through our data that we collected this year, it is showing that it has positive impact on student achievement, which segues me into the next thing. So we set goals in regards to this of what, for the first year, of what we wanted to see students achieve. So in 5K, we centered ourselves around initial phoneme substitution. So that means that when given a word, that students then, if you say bat, and then they say bat, and then you say change b to k, what's our new word? Then they'd be able to say cat, and it's just the first sound, that's the initial phoneme. So that would be the skill that we are asking kids to do. So think about that, right? What they have to do when they take that on. So we looked at that for 5K. In regards, we wanted 80% of our 5K students to be proficient in that area on our screener that we have. And then for first and second grade, we landed on the same skill, because if you remember, really big picture, we would want our students proficient in this area by the end of first grade. But since it was an area that was lacking in our current curriculum, that's why we brought Heggerty in. So through our screener assessments in fall, we noticed that our students in second grade still needed explicit and systematic instruction on it. So we brought them in, and we felt this was that kind of skill for both grade levels that we could land on. Medial phoneme substitution would be the same that would be initial phoneme substitution, it's just that middle sound. So if I could think of a word off my cup, I would do it with you, but I can't right now. So here's our student data then. In regards to 5K, you can see the progression of when we started and we gave the screener in September, where students scored in initial phoneme substitution. And then by January, you can see how the numbers started to shift, right? And our end of the year data now is showing that our goal was for them to be, like, remember we said overall we wanted 80% of our students to be proficient. When we look at proficient and already proficient, which means they already hit like the benchmark previous to that, we have 88% of our students in 5K who achieved that across the district for the end of the year goal. So we exceeded the goal for the first year, so I that's really to celebrate, you know, bringing the curriculum in for the first year. I think that really had a powerful impact on student learning and achievement. For first grade then, you can see again, I did the crosswalk between the beginning of the year and then middle of the year, and you can start seeing how we're shifting. And then the end of the year, the total achievement in first grade between proficient and already proficient was 91%. So we really crushed it there. And then for
music?
oh yeah, and then second grade, again with medial phoneme substitution, you can see, again, we had numbers shifting, so more of our students were moving out of not being proficient to either being proficient or already proficient. And then by the end of the year for second grade, between proficient and already proficient, we have 91% of our students proficient.
When we think about the impact of that long term then, those kindergartners moving to first grade, moving to second grade, I think that's where it's gonna be really, really powerful
And you're
for
gonna
us.
just build on it from first to, each grade.
Yes.
Still
Yeah.
with Haggerty,
So this was the first year using this curriculum. This is the impact that it's had,
Correct.
even in just that short period of time.
Yes,
Yeah,
Okay,
it's very targeted and specific and
Sure.
yeah, very exciting.
And the curriculum that we just adopted, I know that we had kind of addressed this, does not include this at
not at this
any
level. So
level.
we're
So,
we're hoping with your approval to
To
continue to
clarify
use
that.
this, yes.
okay,
It does have phonological awareness lessons in it. However, we feel this is a great complement because it is more explicit in it and systematic, and it's gonna fill some of that complexity. So there are lessons in it, but it's gonna complement it nicely. So this would be kind of like that warm up, in my view, will come alongside and like reinforce it and connect it to the graphemes then to the phonics part. So
okay. And then just one other quick question on the, what does the already proficient mean? Looking through here, can you please explain that to me, where if it's not proficient and they move to proficient and already proficient, is that just before the material was presented to them?
So we have benchmarks set, so like if students already hit that benchmark, like say in September, the student already hit the benchmark in that skill, then they're already proficient in it. So that's how it kind of shifts. So if you see like probably in September,
None of
no
them.
one's already proficient, right? Like they still had that growing, and then if you notice from January, then we had students who basically hit that proficient, so they were already proficient, and then in May it got like even bigger that we had kids hit those targets.
So for example, looking at second grade, 42% were proficient in September, and now those 42 moved into the already proficient category in January. The challenge is the number of overall students changed because we added 10 students to the population, so the percentages
Sure.
don't match, but they're those students who became proficient or were identified as proficient in September are now in that already proficient category in
What
January.
category of students are in that 4% not assessed?
Sometimes it'll be like our nonverbal students.
Okay.
So it was so low before, basically, because it just was not a targeted aspect of your curriculum,
Didn't have
right?
a
Like it
systematic
just
way
didn't
of
hone
doing
in
it.
on it enough.
Yeah, we really did have like explicit instruction around it,
Yeah.
so this provided that explicit instruction.
Okay.
I love it, I love phonemes stuff. I work with sounds all day long.
So For next steps, for sure, we would like to continue to use it in 5K and first grade. And then basically using our phonological awareness screener data with second grade will determine whether we will continue to do it with whole group or we could use it more for targeted instruction with small groups. So we're really gonna lean into that data. All second graders will get that screener in the fall, and then we'll use that data to determine how we will proceed with instruction with them.
With them coming from first grade with stronger skills than they had this year.
Right.
We may
Good
not
point,
need
yeah,
to instruct everybody in a whole group setting, we may just have some who
that's a
who
good idea.
need more targeted support. But if we find that there's still that need whole group, we'll certainly do that.
Yeah, maybe initially or something, but yeah, that's a really good idea, cause why, if
Yeah.
they don't need it, why make them,
Right, there are definitely plenty of other things we can engage them with, but if they do, we're open to that need
Yeah.
and we're prepared to address it, so.
Right, and the nice thing is that like we had 91% of our first grade students in our district show proficiency in the skill that we were ending kind of towards that developmental progression. So once you typically have it, you hang on to it, it's like you don't lose it. So hopefully we will be more in a small group targeted scenario than a whole group for grade 2.
Sure.
cause my memory doesn't serve me, were there handouts that were sent to the parents, like, you know, or did it kind of target that, like for carryover for like maybe even in the summer or with the phonies or do the kids kind of teach the parents
Yeah,
what
we
they do?
really didn't because I think it's so like explicit
Yeah.
and like kind of direct instruction. I
Yeah.
mean, I think if they're reading nursery rhymes and playing word games and silly things, it kind of all just lends itself to that.
Mhm.
I don't know, I would have to think if that would be like something like we'd want, you know what I
Yeah.
mean, parents to like have their kids chopping words and things like
Yeah,
that, you know,
true,
like it
true.
would have to be.
I think, you know, the most important thing continues to be for parents to read
Mhm.
with their kids and talk with their kids. Engage in those conversations, have them write in authentic ways. If they're doing that piece, I think we, you know, that will support
Mhm.
this piece at home and we can continue to target these skills at home.
Some of the feedback from our teachers, like they said they saw it transfer very nicely when students were writing. So if you think about like you have to like stretch those words out when you write and hear those individual sounds, those phonemes.
Mhm.
So they said they saw such an increase in students' ability to be able to stretch words out and nail those beginning middle sounds to be able to write words. So
Right.
that was some of the feedback that the teachers had provided that they saw were some benefits also, just not the skill itself, just not phonological
Right.
awareness, but how it's transferring in their ability to read and then to write words.
Yeah, that makes
Very
sense.
good.
And then I think we'll take some time to, that's okay, we'll take some time to revisit and refine some instructional strategies. So there's some things like in regards to articulation, like it's really important how we articulate certain sounds, how we give feedback to students, the scaffolds that we use with our students when we're presenting the material. There's hand motions and explicit sentence stems. So those are all just nuances, even though it is very kind of direct instruction. There's some nuances that teachers bring to the table while they're facilitating the lessons and giving feedback to students. So we'll still like support that. That was one of the things we did this year in regards to the implementation of it, is we did some coaching cycles around that and supported teachers with that and did some like bite-sized PD things with that.
Sure.
And then we also did gather some instructional data. We did towards the end of the year, we just came in and we had a look for tool just to see if kind of those lessons were aligning. So part of that implementation of bringing a curriculum in. So we'll continue to do that and keep a pulse on how that's going with it.
Yeah, I don't have any other questions but that, you know, I'm glad to see the impact was pretty obvious, pretty immediate.
But overall, the teachers really like it, or?
They did, like in fact, when we were going through the pilot, even for both of the curriculums we were piloting, we received feedback that they said for both of them, that they would recommend us keeping Haggerty to complement what the program had that we were doing, yeah.
I mean, it is that, probably was a learning curve at first, but the books were so user friendly, right? Like
Yes.
they had the cues right there, I remember.
And we had videos available for the teachers to see how it was
Yeah.
supposed to be, and they could play those at first.
Yeah,
and
you can watch them
see-
on YouTube.
Yeah, when I was first observing in September, many teachers were still using those videos,
Mhm.
which was totally okay,
Right.
that's what they were for, and now,
To get a
You know,
feel for it.
yeah, now they're much more comfortable with
Yeah.
it, so. Cool. Yeah, so we won't be reusing, using those videos,
Yeah.
except for our new teachers.
Very good. Okay, so we have to make a motion.
I can read a suggestion.
Okay, very good.
And then I'll read through the whole thing
Okay,
again with the
all right.
language and edit what you would like.
Okay.
Motion to approve the Haggerty Phonemic Awareness Curriculum for grades 5-year-olds kindergarten through 2nd grade. To ensure compliance and prevent curriculum drift, the C&L Committee shall conduct continued reviews throughout this contract. The review shall ensure that the approved curriculum maintains alignment with the board's approved and prioritized standards or any changes that may be made to these approved standards. These reviews shall ensure the curriculum maintains balanced content representing multiple viewpoints. The curriculum committee may take action at any time regarding these issues, including but not limited to revising, supplementing, and or removing. Would you like anything changed?
Is
Did we
there
put
a time
period on that one?
That's the only question I got too.
I would say that we would want to plan for this through our adoption of
Like-
our ELA curriculum because it will complement it so well.
Sure.
Suppose that something new could come out that we would be interested in, and then obviously we would come back to you, but I would say 6 years.
Yeah.
It's appropriate if you
Okay, so we're
are
at
okay
that.
with that.
Is that what the ELA contract is
Yes.
for 6? Okay,
Yes.
that makes sense. Okay.
And then we extend one
I was gonna say,
depending
yes, so
on
we
which one.
don't do both of those together at
Yeah,
the same time,
yeah.
but we'll, yes, I can always readdress
Mental
that.
note.
Oh, yes, I'm not gonna forget that part, you don't have to
Put an
worry.
asterisk
Yeah,
somewhere.
not gonna forget that.
Okay.
So motion to approve the Haggerty Phonemic Awareness Curriculum for 6 years for grades 5-year-old kindergarten through 2nd grade. The rest of the
Yada,
language
yada,
change.
yada.
Yeah,
No.
and there's really no purchase at this point, I think we're going to, because we've already purchased the materials, because we've been using them. So
Oh,
we're
yeah.
gonna get a couple,
That was my next question.
I think
Okay.
one for each building, so they have the videos available, but
Mhm.
other than that, we really, I think, have everything we need.
Yeah, then it's just adjusting to if we have like a high grade level count.
Right. Which we would do, if we add a 2nd grade classroom, then we would need to purchase another, set of materials.
Oh, okay.
Potentially for any, but we would have to do that for any curriculum area,
Correct.
so.
Okay.
So we got cheap on this one, huh?
Well, we put in the money last
Previously
year, so,
invested.
yeah,
We
that's
previously
right.
invested.
That's right.
So, but I'm glad it worked out that we were able to continue. The investment was relatively small, compared to other
Compared to
curriculums
what
that
the
we have.
impact is, obviously,
Yes, I think it has been well worth it.
speaks for itself,
Well, the
so.
return on investment is phenomenal.
Yes,
The data speaks for itself, so.
And something so simple, right? Like,
yes.
you
So
get
with
it.
that said, I'll motion.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Very good.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Awesome.
Michelle.
I would like to see that data next year too.
Okay.
I'm curious.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not
I'm
necessarily,
actually, yeah, I'm curious.
some sort of
to
roll up, yeah.
Build on that.
Like really
See-
see.
All right.
Yep, field trip is
Yes.
next.
Field trip,
From
okay.
field trips, so per our policy around out of state and overnight field trips, and this is both of those things. We have Jennifer Gressler, our middle school world language teacher, and Terry Covers, our middle school principal, here to propose a new field trip for 2024-2025 for our North Middle School students. To the Concordia language villages. We have had students in the past, some of our high school students attend this, but that was many moons ago. So it's not a new field trip necessarily to the district, but it is new to middle school and new in the last, since it stopped. So
Okay.
I'll let Jennifer and Terry take it away, and I will pull up. Do you want me to start with the presentation?
Sure.
All right, thank you for being here.
All right, well, I'm Jenny Dressler and I'm a Spanish teacher at North Middle School. And I would like to propose a field trip to Concordia Language Villages, which is located in Bemidji, Minnesota. About 2.5 years ago, I had the opportunity to chaperone my daughter's high school, Brookfield East High School, on this experience. I went to school at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities, so I had heard a lot about it from people I met there, and I was majoring in Spanish there, but I had never been there. So when I had this opportunity, I was like, awesome, this is something I wanted to do forever. So I went, and Mr. Gabauer gave me approval to go, and I was able to take the 4 days and go. And it was such a worthwhile experience. I came back like so passionate about it, and I was like, this is something I want to bring back to our district again. I didn't know that they had gone in the past, but then when conferring and talking to my colleagues at the high school, and even I guess middle school students had went in the past as well, and they said it was just such a worthwhile program and a great program. And I thought, well, I'd love to bring it back. And I said, well, why did it fizzle out? Why did we stop going? Because I know they went in 2012, 13, and 14. And they said, well, they kind of hopped on the train with Arrowhead and Brookfield East because they had colleagues there that were like, do you want to come? But it was never like greatly promoted. But they all agreed that it was a worthwhile experience to bring back. So hence my proposal tonight.
That's very good. Well, my historical knowledge did not go back that far, so it's good to know we had middle school there too.
No, so the trip offers students the opportunity to fully immerse themselves in their language of study, Spanish or German, because it would be offered to 8th grade Spanish and German students without traveling abroad. The village replicates the feel of the communities where the target language is spoken, and you'll see that in pictures that I have in the presentation. And students have the opportunity to fully hear and speak the language as much as possible for the entire duration of the program. And when I went, it was with high school students, and I was like, wow, they really did immerse themselves and push themselves as much as they could to speak as much as they could. So I said to Barb, my colleague, Hasenauer, I said, so when you went with middle school, how was it? Did they immerse themselves? And she was like, yes, you would be amazed at how much Spanish they spoke. I think 8th grade is a good time to go because by the end of the year, they're speaking in the present tense and they can actually have conversations, short conversations, and I think it would be a great way to expand their knowledge of what they've learned in the 2 years at North Middle School. As you look at the next, so the philosophy slide of Concordia Language Villages is the goal of all programming is an immersion experience in language and culture that motivates participants to be lifelong learners and courageous global citizens in a global community. So they really, encourage everyone. Their staff members are from all different countries, so they bring a lot of knowledge of different areas where Spanish is spoken, and they can speak to their countries and the customs, that they celebrate, and they have little breakout sessions where the students learn a lot more. And it is all taught with a lot of visual aids in the target language. So in the next slide, there are pictures of El Lago del Bosque, which is the village where I stayed in. And you can see it replicates the feel of a Spanish-speaking country, minus the snow. So yeah, there probably still will be snow in March. But you can see the dulceria, the candy shop, the tienda, the store where you can buy things that are all optional. The buildings are beautiful and they have a lot of space inside. We are outdoors a lot, but we are also inside a lot doing activities as well, dependent on the weather. So on the next slide, you can see Waldsee, and this is the German village. I did not see this when I went there, but I talked to Barb and she said it looks exactly like this. You can see in this picture what the outside of the lodging looks like. These are also the community buildings where they eat and have different activities. And you can see just upon entering the village and the community that everything right away is in the target language. And that's why I included the sign at the bottom, because I think it's really impressive that the moment you're in is the moment, okay, let's do this, we're speaking in the language. So the cabins can accommodate 10 to 14 students of the same gender, and each cabin has its own entrance. There will be one chaperone for every 8 students that stays in each cabin, and the chaperones are provided by North Middle School. Chaperones will supervise downtime in the cabins. So every day, the day is really scheduled. From when you wake up, you go to breakfast, you have all these activities and rotations, whether it's cooking or arts and crafts or games in the target language. And then after lunch, there's about an hour of downtime in the cabins, which I think is really good because the students really need that break in the day because they'll be going fully until the evening, till they go to bed then after that. The first day I went there, I said, okay, who wants to take a walk during the break? And everyone's like, yeah, we do. And we walked around the lake. It's set on a beautiful lake. And we had really good conversations in Spanish, which was awesome to keep promoting it. By the second day, no one wanted to take a I don't know if we did that all the time. So, but they loved it, they just love the activities, they love that it keeps them very busy and they're fully immersed the whole time. Students may only go in their assigned cabins, they're not allowed, and we didn't have any problems with that, so it wasn't an issue. Here's a picture of the cabins, and they're very clean. They have bunk beds, bookshelves, and a large bathroom with multiple toilets and shower stalls. So I was very happy with the accommodations. Here are some pictures of the activities. You can see like it's community-based learning. There are a lot of interactive activities. You can see they learned about carnival and they're doing face painting. They learned about Day of the Dead, Dia de los Muertos, and they're doing an interactive puzzle to go with it. They learned about a tradition in Spain called Las Fallas, and they actually built their own falla, which you can see in the middle pictures. And then they presented them to the group and talked about what they symbolize. And at the end of the night, it was pretty cool because they actually burned them in the campfire because in Spain, in Valencia, where the tradition is, at the end of the festival, they burn all the fallas, except for the one winning one, which goes to a museum. So it was pretty neat. And then you can see that there is one of the staff giving a presentation on Day of the Dead in La Padrina to the students sitting around him. And then even like before you eat, you sing a song about giving thanks for food and like everything's in the language. They tell you what you're eating in the language, you repeat it. When you eat in your familia, which is your family, and you only speak in the target language. So my daughter, when she was a sophomore, and she said, yeah, I was a little intimidated at first, but after that first meal, you wanna just jump right in and start using the language a lot more. So, the next page shows even more of the community-based learning and interactive activities. They do a lot of dancing to different songs, they get them up and moving. I think that's the best way to remember things, just by actually going through a physical activity. They learned a game called Chapas, which is played in a lot of Latin American countries, and it's cool because I brought some of these ideas back to North Middle School and we have engaged in them as well in the classroom. There's more Day of the Dead activities, and then you can see a group presenting. There are also groups that present to other groups as well too. So there's like whole, instruction for everyone, as well as group instruction where they break into groups as well. So if you go to the next slide, I have a list of schools in the Milwaukee area who have recently participated within the last year or two. The Milwaukee French Immersion School has participated, obviously in the French program. St. Robert School in Shorewood, Longfellow and Whitman Middle Schools in the Tosa area, Brookfield East High School, Arrowhead High School, and Slinger High School. So there is a video which the presentation was sent out, so hopefully you were able to view it. Also, that is like the testament to the program from the teachers and shows what kind of activities they have.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions?
You're proposing this for 8th grade. Do they have to be in like their second year of world language, or can that be their first? So what are some of the background requirements that you're thinking you would have?
It's not an option, you can only go into 8th grade German or Spanish if you've had it in 7th grade.
Okay, so that's their second year.
Mhm.
Okay.
You had mentioned about high school students also participating. Is the experience different for high school versus middle school students?
I don't think so, because when I talked to my colleagues at the high school as well as my colleague at the middle school, it sounded very similar.
Because I'm just thinking of the age difference, right, and then activities in regards to appealing to 16-year-old versus a 13-year-old. So I just wanted to see.
I think because it's an immersive experience and they're all novel like language users, that like developmental piece is really about creating a safe space for them to be willing to take that educational risk to try the language. And whether they're 14 or 16, just creating that safe environment and having accessible learning tasks. I don't know that it's that great of a difference because the skill set is similar.
Okay. So they'll be doing activities together then?
They could be, depending on what they sign up for in the rotation.
So when you sign up in that rotation, so we might be also assigned with another school potentially, other
Potentially.
students? Okay. But when we bunk, it's just our students?
Just our students, yes.
How many cabins are there? Or I guess how many people total would be there generally? I mean, do you know? Do you have a feel?
When I went, we were the first group back after COVID, so it was a smaller group.
Okay.
But they won't overbook. I mean, in the Spanish Village, I believe that they had 1 for males and 2 for females. So whatever they can accommodate will be.
So I was noticing, because it costs $550, but you're gonna look into a grant for through PTSO.
Yes,
The one thing that gives me a little pause is that cancellation policy.
the $75.
Well, with 14 days or less, students will not receive a refund.
And I
So
did
like,
talk to
what if
them
you're
about it,
sick?
because it gave me pause too, and I called them about it, and they said, of course, they're gonna work with
Okay.
people.
Okay.
And if there's an extenuating circumstance, they will, adjust to it, they know
Okay.
things happen and people can get sick.
So you don't get the 75, but you probably get the 550 back? I guess that should be very clear with parents.
Right.
Yeah, parents will have to, I'm sure.
And so what's the insurance policy there? Because I know in regards to field trips, there has to be insurance should be taken out, and I'm more familiar with students who are taking like international trips out of the state, so I don't know if this will be.
Yeah, so we work with our insurance company and our insurance will cover us with our regular, the field trip pieces and, the piece of data and releases that will need parents to sign, but our insurance covers us to travel out of state.
So the first day they get there, it's like their travel day, right? And do they have things in the evening for them?
They do.
I mean, right, I guess it's automatic, right, when you're there, you're immersed into it, so.
Yeah, you start
Okay.
right away until you go to bed at either 10:30 or.
Okay.
It says here a minimum of 35 participants, what if we don't have 35 and we can't participate in it? It's gotta be either 35 or more.
Well, to have the cost of the bus be efficient, that's
Oh,
the number that I
yeah.
thought would be needed.
Okay.
Because to rent a coach bus for 4 days is costly.
Absolutely, good point.
So I think that I would have anyone interested, if this goes through, sign up on a Google form. And then once we reach that number, send out the information, okay, now this is where you should sign up, because I don't want anyone to sign up if we don't have the minimum amount of participants.
Is that something you'll introduce at the beginning of the school year, so they kind of get,
Yeah, I was thinking
The
maybe
buzz
at the open
out there,
house, if it
yeah,
would go through
yeah.
to have like brochures and flyers and talk to
yeah,
parents
great,
about it.
yeah, definitely.
It says here Spanish or German. Will you decide the rotation of that? You're just gonna pick either or at each field trip, or how is that
No,
gonna be?
both languages would have the opportunity
Oh,
to
okay,
go.
so both.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah.
All right, good.
Alright, any other questions or?
So, just looking, again, this is just details I'm sure that you've ironed out, which by the way, thank you for ironing out all the details. It's a lot of information here, and I appreciate that effort put in to bring as much to the front as you can. So for the chaperones, they're gonna be asked to pay for 2 meals, to and from, or is the district then reimbursing, like, how does that work with the chaperones, are they paying for themselves to stay there?
Chaperones don't pay to participate, they're just included in the fee of everyone.
Okay,
So, yeah.
yep, that answers that question, okay. And that makes sense, cause there's quite a few that would have to be available to go,
Yes.
so I'm glad that we are able to take care of them and, say thank you for chaperoning this opportunity
Right.
for 4 days.
Any other questions or comments?
On average, we have to at least have 4 chaperones.
And depending how many go, because we would need some in the German village and then some in the Spanish village, because they don't interact, the 2 villages.
Okay.
And then if it's more than 8, you have to have 2 adults in the cabin, which you kind of want another adult. I'm just saying. I would.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I love the idea. I think that world language is really important and have the immersive experience is something that, again, without having to leave the country and be there and try and be more familiar with that. And I think that this, presenting this information to the parents and, obviously giving the students the opportunity and they can decide what is, best for their families. But the fact that we can offer this to our students, I think is a great opportunity for them. So thank you for bringing this forward.
I think it's just such a nice stepping stone too towards, the travel experiences that are international are really growing in popularity in world language opportunities, and I think that we can do something that gives kids some of that experience in a middle school setting, makes it more accessible and hopefully fuels that fire of love of learning about different cultures.
And even seeing that picture of, everything in German, like how to navigate in another country, and what signs to look for, and all of that is an experience that, as much as you try and replicate that in the classroom, it's just not the same.
And I would like to make this an annual trip if it goes through.
Absolutely.
I think that's a great
Each class,
experience.
because each 8th grade class will have, its own opportunity.
One language in elementary, that's what I'd like to
I was gonna add that to our topics in 5 minutes on the agenda. I saw this, I was like, ooh, yes, I like that. So thank you very much for bringing this
Ms.
forward.
Dressler brought this to me, this is like her passion child, she put a ton of work into this
I
and
can
a
tell.
lot of hours and so all of the credit lands firmly there, you did a great job.
If I didn't feel it was a valuable experience, I wouldn't put all it in, but I think it's really worthwhile for the students, so.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for all the extra time and bringing this, I guess, back to our attention if we had been there before this.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I think it's great.
Okay, so
Alright,
what's the motion?
Okay, so motion to approve the proposed 8th grade Concordia Languages Village field trip to Bemidji, Minnesota in March 2025.
Do we wanna have that an annual opportunity written in there, or do we wanna review this every year with
What we typically do and
Yep,
add
for field
anything
trips.
in is, after it's been approved, is then I will bring you next, sometime in the
Update,
winter, spring, like here are the
whole
trips that,
Oh, yeah, the
you'll just
whole-
get a list of trips that we would like to renew.
And it'll be part of the list.
Yes.
Once it's been approved as an initial trip, then it can be added to
Yeah.
the renewal.
the renewal list? Okay,
Cool.
Well, I'm curious to hear all about it.
yes.
I kinda wanna go. Oh, forget it, I'll just go to Mexico.
Bemidji in March.
Yeah, I don't know, I'm game for all the weather, I love weather.
I saw the boots and the coats.
Yeah, it's pretty
Okay, so, do we have a motion?
Yes, I'll motion.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good deal.
Thank you very much.
Exciting.
Congratulations.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks for the information.
All right, you're welcome.
Give us an update.
We will.
Love to hear about it, yeah.
You'll see it all on Facebook.
All right, bye.
Okay, moving right along, thank you. Discussion item, elementary grades K-5 through 5th. We're doing through 5th, right? Science
Yes,
update?
just for fifth tonight, so we will bring middle
that's right.
school, we'd originally talked about K through 8 and then it got to be a little too much, and so talking with board chair Stewart, I think
Mhm.
we do elementary now and we will bring middle school probably in the fall, just because they've got some summer work to work on a unit that has been approved, but not that they've not taught before, so that'll be an opportune time to kind of refresh.
Okay.
But yes, Angie Sardina and Nina Overholzer are here as our,
Here again.
yes, here they are. They're setting a record for the number of times, but they've been doing some really good work and have really championed elementary science this year. So about a year ago this time, we came to you with a proposal to adopt mystery science as our new curriculum, and we are super excited to talk through like how that's gone this year and a little bit about one of the things we know about mystery science is that it regularly updates. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the updates this year, and yeah, and then I'll have a couple words at the end. I'll let them jump in.
All right, so just to remind you, Mystery Science is really online-based instruction, really a phenomenon-based instruction. So age-appropriate, kid-friendly phenomenon that anchors a unit and takes them through that whole unit. Each lesson they do, they're getting a little deeper into that question. So they really see things online, like instead of just in their textbook, which is so cool is like if they're doing something ocean, like they're actually in the ocean with the scuba diver. You know, so really it's really neat to watch those videos that kind of launch the learning. And then there's discussion, observations, and then hands-on experiments or hands-on models that the kids build and manipulate to really bring something to life. So that's kind of the base of the Mystery Science resource. Next one, so this was kind of a general outline of how we rolled things out this year. So in August, we did some PD with the teachers, just orienting them to the resource and to the online platform and how to access everything. Of course, throughout the year, once we get going, there's a lot of other things that we had to add into that, but we just needed to get them started on the right foot at the beginning of the school year. And then throughout the fall, they had delivery of the mystery packs, which received rave reviews. So the mystery packs is essentially, it's really sturdy cardboard drawers. So like, you're not just getting like dumped with like a box of stuff, and they're organized in drawers. You pull it out, lesson 4, these are the things, they're counted, they're measured, they're labeled, whatever, just so you're ready. I mean, there's still a lot of prep, like
Yeah.
that's another thing that we have to work through.
Yeah,
But
one
to
less
have
step
those
to get
things
all the
ready,
stuff. Yeah.
instead of having a bag of flour and you gotta find a measuring cup, and then it was all like labeled and measured, and just people raved about how much that helped. So they got their mystery packs in the fall. Nina and I did some work with grade level leads to Nina will talk a little bit more in depth about these, but we did some at the end of each unit trying to capture like what went well, what were the hangups, how can we refine things for next year, with your first year in a new resource. Did some assessments, and then again, same thing, calibrating around how those are going, getting some data, but also using that to learn about how we can improve our instruction and things. We did some work around vocabulary. We did establish substitute teacher accounts. We found that out in a jiffy that was tricky if there's a substitute and we don't want to leave those logins. So we created, I think Nina did most of this, created substitute logins so you can leave that and so that learning can keep on going and we don't have to pause when we have a sub in there. And then in January was an opportunity at that, some of our PD sessions, we were able to kind of refresh and revisit some things that teachers, once you get going, you forget, oh yeah, that's right, there are some areas where I can access some things, revisit some of that, and we did some vocabulary work. It kind of tied in nicely with the PD we were doing around ELA vocabulary work, and to bring that into the science instruction, so a nice little bridge there. So we did some of that work in January. So, let me talk about the review.
So Angie and I kind of work together. It's important to monitor progress along the way. And so we thought on a unit by unit basis would be a good time for teacher teams to come together and really just capture what's going well. What do we want to replicate again in the future? What are some of the hangups, or what do we need to problem solve now so we don't have that same issue next year? Capturing those notes, also on the student learning, are there things, adjustments we can make? So the plus delta component, and above it, there were some of the guiding questions to help the conversations, and Angie and I joined those when we were able to. But then also important to capture some of the student learning. So again, we were in our first year, and we were provided with mystery science, like the answer key. But what Angie just kind of spoke about, some of our work was really fleshing out what are those expected responses, what's proficiency around those, so that everybody is consistent, not just in the learning, but also in the expectations of that learning and their scoring. So we wanted to monitor not only how is the teaching going, but how is the student learning coming along. If we're teaching it, are they learning it? So we are capturing year 1 data around that to monitor that progress and also help inform those conversations. So this was just kind of our year 1 way of keeping a close pulse unit by unit. Like in kindergarten, there's 6 units, first grade has 5 units. So each chunk of learning, capturing that. So that going into next year, we can be even more well-informed and prepared and have tighter instruction around that. Then as we keep going, we just wanted to share some of the feedback. Teacher leads have had multiple opportunities to share feedback from their teams, not only what was captured on the document that I just showed, but also in a variety of different meetings that we've had, and things that have come up repeatedly is that it's just very age appropriate, it's active, it's hands-on, very rich discussions, students able to share their learning, make connections, articulate their thinking and their learning. That anchor layer, just sparking the curiosity, and that you pose this question and then throughout the unit you keep going deeper and deeper and learning more and more to answer that and come back to that and really figure that out. So that's been very hooking for kids to capture their interest and engagement. The real world connections and examples, teachers have been really impressed where they'll share something really cool. Like I had a kindergarten teacher and she's like, but I thought, well, wow, they came up with this really neat idea. She's like, but then I Googled it and it's really a town that this was really a problem, that you use science to solve this, you know. And there's a second grade example with some rivers and again, it was just like jaw dropping that like, this wasn't just for school, like this is really a true issue, which made it all that much more engaging and just making more and more connections. And then that students are talking about science at home and parents are making comments that they're, you know, hearing more about this, their child is excited. The mystery kits, like Angie spoke to, teachers have just raved about those, you know, right away. It was like, and we're gonna get those again, right? We're gonna get them. You know,
I remember that in the
we are,
initial
yeah.
discussion of like, otherwise it's kind of like, yeah, right, who's gonna like run to the store to get
gosh.
this or that, and you know, it's just not practical.
yeah, it's,
So
so that,
I'm glad to hear that they had utilized them and that went so well.
yes. And if it's there, if we build it, they will come. If the drawer is there, they will use it.
Made science as easy as possible to teach, which is half the battle because it is such a resource rich.
Mhm.
Especially at this age where you have more of that teacher hands-on helping.
And you don't have a lab where you can prep it ahead of time, you don't, you know,
Right.
all those kind of little nuances and factors and yeah. And then just that the platform is really intuitive, it's user-friendly. Like Angie mentioned, we were able to set up accounts for substitutes and that's been very seamless for the instruction to continue even if the teacher's not there. Like it's just that friendly. Which again, more gets taught when it's easy to use as well as engaging and students are hooked on it. So the vocabulary, like Angie mentioned, of course, doing some work around vocabulary and tiers of vocabulary. So Mystery Science, one of their updates, they came out with the vocabulary slides. Maybe about October, they kind of start at 5th and work their way down, seems to be their progression so far that we've noticed.
Sure.
So there were slews of words and then we really thought about how do we make this even more user-friendly for the teachers. They need to know what words are in this unit, but then we thought, gosh, you know, every lesson prints out this whole slew of words. That's not that helpful. We need to know like what are the words in the whole unit. So put our heads together, got to working and came up with this plan, which again received some nice feedback that was really helpful to see. Going into year 2, we're already taking it to the next level as part of, you know, coming up work that you'll hear about for summer and going into next year.
Should send that as feedback to the company.
Yes, and you know, that's the other really
They
great
should
thing
provide
about them
that
is
to
they're
them.
very responsive to
responsive.
feedback.
Okay, good.
Yep.
To know.
Yep, they really are. They want feedback, they encourage you to give feedback, so, and then they're always working to make those refinements. So just helping teachers to really think about what are those tier 3, those content, really specific words. Then those tier 2 words, those academic words that are going to cross content areas, they're going to see in multiple ways. Those are like the most biggest bang for your buck because you're gonna see them over and over. And then those tier 1 words that are your common everyday words, but you just wanna make sure that students have those words just to help further and deepen their understanding as they make more connections. So that's kind of the vocabulary that on the teacher end, Angie's gonna talk a little bit more about on the student end.
So then that's kind of the work Nina and I did to help like prioritize words, then we thought, okay, how do we get these, again, for consistency, so like teachers have access to these and then they can use them. So a couple of things that we did at our lower levels, they use word walls a lot, so you created like word wall
Those are coming
cards.
soon.
Yeah, so start it, word wall cards, so
Summer
they can
work.
use them in their pocket charts and things like that. At the 3-5 level, I created just kind of a poster, so they're bigger colored posters that just kind of, here's our keywords that, so they're just visible and kids can access them quickly and start, like the goal is for them to start using them in those discussions that they have when they're transferring those words into there. And then we also did student lists with definitions that teachers used in a variety of ways, so again, students have access to those quick. to find the definitions and those keywords. And then the snapshot up in the upper right-hand corner, that's off the Mystery Science website, those slides. There are a couple of extra clicks to get to those, so having them in other places just enables kids to have it here while they're talking about this, as opposed to having multiple screens open, and those extra clicks can be a little trickier. But what's really cool about the slides is it's not still even there, it's a video. So that example that I had there, I think is joint, and that's an x-ray and it moves. So when kids are looking at it, so a stagnant picture of like a muscle, great, but when they're seeing it moving or seeing that thing happening, it just helps make those connections to those words and the definitions that much stronger. So we have a lot of ways that we're layering in that deep vocabulary into the instruction as well. All right, so the awesome thing about being a responsive online resource is that they can change things really easy as opposed to a textbook that you're stuck with for years. The tricky thing is that it's always changing. So, but in digging in a little bit, so these lessons, I have not accessed these lessons. They just, June 1st, they went live. It's really nice. So in the beginning of May, I think they say, okay, just so you know, these are the changes that you're going to see coming.
Okay.
And then you're kind of, so they give you a heads up, you don't have to dig and be surprised and find out. And then they tell you exactly why they changed it, which is helpful too. So I don't have to look at, like, I know Mystery Set, but I don't know 4th grade Unit 2, Lesson 4 to find out what they changed. So that's super helpful. And then in looking at these, they changed things, but it really was, it's nothing crazy. It's just being responsive to make something based on teacher feedback, which is awesome. So K2, nothing really changed. They added an anchor layer to some of the K5 units that didn't have that anchor layer yet that we kind of talked about. That kind of is that phenomenon that kind of takes them through the unit. And those hadn't been quite developed, so they have all of those set yet. In 3rd grade, they had 3 lessons that they called revised. And when I looked at like what they changed, it just says that the lesson is now more strongly aligned to the standard by updating the worksheet or more clearly illustrating plant traits. So like in digging into that one, they got feedback that this illustration with the plant was not a great one, and they changed that illustration to be something that was better for kids to see the difference in the plant trait. So again, it's pretty minor and just for specificity or stronger link. There was somewhere like they said the lesson 1 and lesson 2, teachers said those you need to bridge those 2 lessons. They felt like 2 isolated things. So they did some things to bridge those lessons together tighter. Okay, so this 3rd grade, this heredity, survival, and selection unit, all 3 of those, it just says that the lesson hasn't changed, or they changed it to be more strongly aligned by tweaking the wrap-up and review question, or they tweaked the step-by-step activity, or they updated the worksheet, so just little tweaks like that. Lesson 3, they did not change the activity, but they updated the exploration and wrap-up portion with some additional questions to bridge the process. That's kind of their verbiage there. 4th and then 5th grade, that's just literally a lesson split. So that lesson, when I looked at it to just refreshing my memory, it was really long. And so their feedback was to keep that anchor phenomenon going. They're like, you're stretching it now as we get this deep. Like, so they're like, we're better off breaking this into 2 separate units. So they have an Earth and Space Patterns unit and then a Stars and Planets unit with an assessment in the middle there, and it kind of just broke those 2 chunks up a little bit, and then offered that opportunity to assess in the middle to kind of see what kids are learning, but there was no change to the content necessarily. Okay. 4th grade had a lot of changes, so they added a whole new unit, which will be a challenge to fit in. So this new unit is animal and plant adaptations, and what it noted, again, I haven't like viewed and reviewed all of these lessons, but what it noted, what they were doing is that one of the units that in 4th grade has is life science standard 1-1, and these lessons are just going a little bit deeper. And this one talked about humans that we already had. This is talking about sea creatures and their external structures instead of like they did a human body like the eye that they were examining in biceps or something like that. So this is doing sea creatures and their external structures. That lesson 2 is about animal senses. And then lesson 3 is about the external structures of trees. So they're kind of taking humans, and they're also taking animals, and they're taking plants. So they're kind of adding some more depth to that particular standard they were addressing. And then they also had a unit split for the exact same reason, that the unit was way too long. So they broke it into 2 chunks again. Same lessons, but just kind of breaking them up. And then they changed the title of one unit, and it was literally just the title that I could tell. So that might have been, again, just to more strongly correlate with what they were doing in that unit. So in part of our spring and summer work will be, we've started with some of this with some of the grade levels, and I absolutely loved, like I worked with fourth grade so far, it was really, really a fun couple hours that we did digging into that plus delta and that data. We were looking at the assessment and saying like, where were the hangups for kids, and teachers saying like, next year, now that we know this, how they'll shore up their instruction a little bit. We also looked at, so kind of looking at that assessment and really thinking like, what do we need to tweak in it to help students be successful on things? And then aligning and adjusting the pacing. Like now that we lived with it, when it said something took 20 minutes, did it take 20 minutes? Or, if they said this will last about 2 weeks, so living with it a little bit, we can kind of tweak some of those things and get a little tighter with the pacing. Right now, we just kind of went, maybe about this much time. Well, now we should know a little bit more, just again, to try to ensure we can get everything in, because there's a lot to get into the elementary school day. So we want to try to do the best we can with pacing those out, and that pacing takes place, Nina and I can facilitate that between buildings too, so that Valley View and Riverside are relatively in the same spot, kind of pacing along. I mean, a day off isn't a big deal, but we want to kind of be time mindful of that.
Ensuring that kids have a common experience regardless
Yeah.
of which school they go to or which teacher they have.
Right, absolutely.
And then also making sure that we don't get to the end of the year and you're like, oh, now we have only 2 weeks left in a whole unit. If we can try to hold ourselves to certain things, that just helps us stay on pace to get through everything we'd like to get through. Then we will be we're creating kind of a student workbook. They have worksheets and printouts that go with every lesson, and teachers were initially having to print those for each lesson, and then we found a way you can access kind of files where you could group it by units and then have that kind of printed. We can insert extra, like that vocabulary document right in there, and some of those assessment things right into students have everything there. That's just a little bit of work for us, but to make it meaningful and helpful, we'll do some of that work. And then planning for those revisions, taking the time to look through those lessons. What do we need to know before we start the school year about any of those changes? But then really keeping the standards driving the discussion, in the work I did with fourth grade, we went back to the standard and said, well, what do they really need to know though? Because sometimes you get off in the activity, but what do they really need to know? That based on our standards. So really letting that drive all of that conversation. And teachers are already saying too, it's gonna be so much, not easier, nothing's easy, but just more efficient next year, now that you've got that first year under your belt and you can see those connections, or you get how things are gonna go together and not feel as day by day, you can just have a vision of the whole unit. So they've definitely communicated that as well.
And some more of the work that goes along with this, as we're working with the 2 grade level leads at each school at each grade level, that team of us 3, this portion is also a part of that work. So developing these curriculum unit plans. So putting down all these components to ensure that there's consistency from classroom to classroom in the instruction, that unit overview, this is very clear. This is what we're teaching, this is what we're expecting students to learn, this is the amount of time it's going to take, this is how we know that they have achieved it, these are the proficiency levels we expect. Just creating consistency across and making it very clear for the teaching and learning and also for families. So this is a part of the work that we are beginning to do and will continue into the summer, and I'm sure beyond, talking about these in ELA and everything else, so but it's just really important work and important to have clarity for everyone, teachers and then the families as well. So we are working on those. And so into next year, we'll continue to monitor student learning, we'll continue to monitor the progress that's being made, being in contact with the company, with any of those feedback and revisions, surveying families now that it's been a year, getting any of their feedback, actually getting quantitative survey data from teachers. We've had a lot of anecdotal conversations, and we had their plus delta, but now getting a bit deeper with that. And then also with our students, there are extension opportunities in the lessons that you might do an additional activity, you might do, there's some readings available or videos. This year, not really any grade during
We
any
said
unit
dabble, yeah.
really had,
Opportunity.
yes, year one, you're just trying to figure out, and year two, so exploring some of those extensions and seeing opportunities where we might be able to even go deeper, and then making those literacy connections. My view is that knowledge building curriculum, and does have two of the units out of the 5 have science integration, and so seeing where we can really be strategic and deepen that learning again by making cross-content connections. So we'll dig deeper into that. And then just more observation opportunities, getting into the classrooms and seeing it on the other end. You know, we see a lot of the curriculum end, but now seeing the student learning side.
And I think providing those opportunities for teachers too, like they like to see each other, sometimes like, what does it look like in their room because I'm struggling with it, or whatever, so providing those opportunities for teachers as well, because they sometimes need to or would like to observe colleagues to learn more too and see how everyone else is doing stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think we'll just kind of continue going deeper, and Angie and I have our work cut out for us, but then anything that comes up as well, you know, as teachers see a need or have a need, how can we help problem solve around that, and then ensure that every teacher is getting that same update or information or support, so.
Knowing teachers will have new ELA curriculum, which will be a heavy lift next year, having a solid foundation here will be really nice, because that will, it'll just be a good continuance of the work that you have done has gotten you off to a really good start, so.
So you had mentioned that the students are, excited, engaged, with all the materials. Have you noticed with the assessments, scores going up, any difference there? I'm not expecting that, I'm just kind of curious to see like if their engagement is at such a higher level where you're seeing that, or, they're understanding what they need to understand and it's kind of.
It's not really, we're not really able to see if they go up in score compared to what we've done in the past, there's not a way to really compare that.
Okay.
So what we thought this year is just to get that baseline, I would hope that next year
Sure.
we would see growth in it, and then trying to see like what is a reasonable expectation, like around like looking at the and again, we don't wanna change our expectations so that we're like saying kids are more successful than they really are, but just trying to gauge like where are we seeing, like if a lot of kids struggled on a certain assessment or a certain item, we have really good conversations with that 4th grade team that I met with so far, like around certain questions and what it's getting at, and then saying, you wanna know what, that lesson, we need to make sure we focus on this because that's necessary for this. So seeing those connections between, that's a long answer to your question. No, I don't think we have a way to compare those two things. We should in the future, if we continue to kind of just ask teachers to enter in some of these things and analyze some of that, we should. I would expect.
You should, after students have had the unit for a while, or the experience for a while, next year's 4th graders will hopefully perform better than this year's 4th graders did because they have had more exposure.
Right.
And the assessment it's like a multifaceted assessment. There are some like kind of, it's not just multiple choice, yes, no kind of thing. There's like diagrams and they're like label how the water would travel through this. Which of these 3 things why? And then there's like an open response. And so trying to say like what is a quality open response for a 3rd grader to write there? What would we really want to see? That's tricky. So that's the stuff that we have to shore up through conversation and through like getting kind of common understanding of what would be a proficient type of a response for an 8-year-old in that kind of a question. So that's some of the conversations that we're facilitating to just kind of get to common expectations around those assessments. But they're good assessments, they're really, like I said, multifaceted and deep thinking, and there are some just like make sure they know a couple of things, but there's some really neat questions.
Good.
The 2nd grade team noticed, the content shifts. This might be a plants, this might be, earth, space type content. So that content shifts, so you don't necessarily can't compare that unit to unit, but their ability to answer a short answer question or to use their rationale to explain why they made the water flow this way because it was coming down the mountain and the river flows towards the ocean. to be able to explain that, they said they could really see students' progress over the year. So some of that is just developmental, as you're a whole year older, you've had another year of reading and writing, but some of it also is you're learning how to write a constructed response. And so that's some of the learning that they noticed. Mystery science unit assessments begin in second grade. They have lesson checks in kindergarten and first, but they didn't have unit assessments. So part of the work when the kindergarten team met, they said, we wanna have a unit assessment. We wanna have just a little capstone on the end of the unit where students will demonstrate some of their knowledge they've had. And so they pulled together from some of those lesson checkpoints and ironed out how they would expect students to respond, what would be proficient in this as a kindergarten level, so that they would have some of those pieces of evidence of student learning as well and start building that up. So that was cool that, those teachers wanted that for their students as well. So we just keep refining and keep enhancing each time we get together. I feel like add a couple bullets to the to-do list every time we meet.
It's really fun and powerful work.
Yeah.
I think that high level engagement is really important. I think naturally we will see at higher grades and for them to absorb this information, because again, information in regards to going short term to long term is not just all about just taking in information, regurgitating, it's them actually building upon it and learning tactile, et cetera. So I think it naturally will improve. And it's just
I'm excited to hear that, we like it.
Yeah.
That's good news.
We
made a good choice.
Use it, yes, so we're really happy with it. One thing that we will do in the next day or two, I won't commit Laura to tomorrow, but we will create updated accounts for each of you, so you can go in and see those changes.
I got an email from them, I was
Oh,
hoping,
good.
I have contact and account information, so I don't know.
Oh, very good.
You might have had account information
It was in
from the
April.
pilot.
Oh, was it for the pilot? Okay, sounds good,
It
yeah,
could
that'd be
be
great.
still active.
Yeah, it probably is.
We'll
I
make sure
kinda
that
kept
it-
putting it off, I'm like, well, I'll look later.
Yeah, so we'll make sure that you have updated access so that
Okay,
you can go in and see the changes too.
Well, thank you very much.
well, thank you, that was interesting.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll move on to,
Yeah.
yeah, so you get to stay put.
Yeah, that's right.
Continuous improvement update.
So as you may recall, we did some rethinking and renewing of our efforts around classroom continuous improvement. And so we presented in August what we were going to be doing, and now we're here in June to present where we've been. And Lynn Grimm, who's our LAS at the high school, and Shelley Wolf, who is finishing her last week as the LAS at the middle school before her retirement. Nina Overholzer, who's the LAS at Shady Lane, and Ben Franklin, and then Angie Savina, who's at Riverside and Valley View, are here to share just an update on where we've been and where we're going. So I'll let them jump right in.
So again, why we're doing continuous improvement, it's to identify improvement opportunities, monitor the progress. We make adjustments, improve our results, and get roadblocks out of the way. Like simple things, if something's not big enough, just like I love that curriculum that you're talking about with your science. Like joy, this is what you do to stay in business, it's just so obvious, and we do the same thing for learning, so.
And so how does it impact the student learning? So the mission part of it is really setting the culture in the classroom while keeping the rigor for the learning. They collectively develop it with the students and guides the process around behaviors to promote learning as well. And it supports the building relational capacities, which was our avid goal at the high school this year as well. Then the learning goals, proficiency expectations, and clear learning target. The verbiage with this is all similar in workplaces and other learning environments. It's really setting the stage for the learning, providing a target for measuring growth, and this is all driven by the Wisconsin state standards. It keeps the students focused and on the right work. And then we have ending there with the progress towards reaching goals and feedback and strategies improving learning. So that feedback is really broken into two different parts. You have the feedback where the students are doing a plus delta, giving the teacher feedback on how they are do, what their needs are in the classroom so that the teacher can make adjustments in that class setting. And then you have your individual classroom PDSAs and individual PDSAs as well for those short cycles of improvement too. It's really a way to make sure that we're impacting and having those changes in real time versus waiting till the end of a semester or waiting till the end of a year, which years ago is what really did happen. And it creates authentic adjustments in teaching and lessons throughout units.
So we had the opportunity, post-COVID and a lot of things kind of took a backseat for us to really keep the continuous improvement mindset at the forefront of the work we were doing. So in re-engaging in this work, it was kind of an opportunity for us, like in the spirit of continuous improvement. We know more now, we know better, let's do better. So we were able to kind of reframe and rethink what continuous improvement could look like for our teachers and our students. So that's kind of what we've been rolling out the past 2 years as we kind of refresh and reset and re-engage in this type of work. So, and a little bit of that, in some ways, I think we had lost sight of the purpose of continuous improvement. I think we had, in the past, it had felt very rigid and like lockstep in exactly what it should look like and sound like, and that doesn't feel good. You want to have, you want teachers to be responsive to students and to have some autonomy in how that looks, but we want to keep you want to have the integrity of what continuous improvement is, but it doesn't have to be quite so rigid, and that just enables teachers then to make it work for their students, make it work in their classroom, in their setting, or wherever they're working. And then also trying to bridge that it doesn't feel like another thing, like, oh, now we have to do continuous improvement. No, it's in everything that we do. Some of that science we just talked about, that's continuous improvement. That's saying, like, what problem do we see? How could we solve it? Let's try that. How are we gonna know if it's working? Oh, it did? All right, let's replicate some of that and let's tackle a new. And we're doing that all the time. Sometimes there's just little loops that need to be closed or a little explicitness we need to give, or it's not quite trickling to the students, but teachers are having those conversations. So just trying to loop and find those opportunities where it's just embedded and then it's not like a thing, it's just how we operate is more what we want it to be. So this was our opportunity to kind of reset and rethink about this with that kind of a spirit.
Can you maybe explain a little bit, maybe an example, commitment versus compliance?
So if you're compliant with something, you're doing it so that someone checks it off, you did it. And that's kind of I'll talk a little bit, we used to have a rubric around this, which rubrics are great. But then people the goal is to get to a 3 and then you're done. But that's not continuous improvement either, right? You don't want to check it off, I'm done. No, we want to be, and that's just driving compliance. I just want to get this all done so I can be checked off and I'm good. We don't want that. We want people committed to this type of thinking about our students, about their learning. Yeah, it's really more about that mindset. So we want to have people committed to that rather than just doing it so that they can check off and get a 3 or that. Does that help you guys understand?
Kind of really that shift from it being like a noun to a verb. Might be that you're really living it, breathing it, talking it. It's not about just hanging something on your wall.
Always, I'm in healthcare, so we're always, every week, you guys do it too. Always reassessing and, changing gears, tweaking things, and it's funny how it can always change, right? Is that kind of that mindset?
Exactly.
Always,
And that was a part of the
not
shift we're
just settling for, this is how it's done.
If you've never read the book Eat That Cookie, have you read that? It's based from a nurse that tells her whole story about continuous improvement and how she was very compliant in the beginning and how she, changed her.
Just do it.
It's a great read.
Yeah. I gotta just work here. No, I'm just kidding. Sometimes I feel that way. No, but yeah, I get it.
So it really is common in like Lynn said, in workplaces around the world. It's not really an education.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so this guiding document, this is kind of what we shifted from a rubric to more of a guiding document. So we updated the format. We provided some guiding questions to really help teachers reflect on what does this look like? What kinds of things should I be thinking about or asking in these different areas, these different components to really, again, just facilitate the thinking a little bit. We included opportunities to think about what does this look like as teachers, what does this look like for students, what does this look like for teams? We have, groups of people who maybe aren't as, closely, they're not traditional classroom teacher, but we all still want to be doing this thinking, so maybe it's a team of adults that are working together to solve a problem. So we wanted to kind of capture all of those layers so that it really can apply to so many different situations. It's not necessarily just teacher to student. We made clear connections to the teacher performance standards because this is part of our evaluation is really captured in the idea of continuous improvement, so making those links for teachers to really help them see that. And then we also added a column to that document for teachers to kind of be reflecting and adding notes and setting goals and things like that. So that next page is what it looks like, which is kind of messy on a small slide. It's a two-sided document, but you can see that we added those guiding questions. We have it linked directly to those teacher performance standards to kind of facilitate some of that, have those questions. Some of the work we did do this year, we kind of made different versions of this, so it's not so busy. If you really are, like we worked with, Nina and I had a session that we did with grade level leads where we really asked them to think about the teams and how their team is functioning. Your fourth grade team at Valley View, how's your team functioning? Where are some opportunities in here for you to have improvement? We took all the other stuff off and just made this with just pulled out those team elements so they could just focus on that. And that way it doesn't feel overwhelming or you're supposed to be doing all of this, because that was not the message this year either. It's just pick little things, just those little tweaks you can make, not you need to be perfect at this by the end of the year in all those different factors. So we got good feedback on that. So part of the work we talked about maybe doing this summer is pulling out and having one that just has kind of the teacher focus and one that just has the student focus, so people could choose areas they want to focus on and work on and just hone in on that rather than feeling like all of this, it gets a little busy and messy. But it's great, it's just busy and messy.
It's a lot of videos.
Yeah, it's a lot. So in rethinking,
refresh, I think.
yeah. So in rethinking this year, we had consistent presentations K-12 that we kind of provided training that not training. It was more just some PD and refreshing for the staff. But then each of us presenting it in our buildings might have looked a little bit different, just tweaking to your audience. But our first semester, we really focused on those first four components, which are the mission, the year-long goal, and then second semester, we shifted to those next four components, which are those smaller PDSA cycles. And that's, again, just to break it down for teachers to just choose little shifts and kind of, instead of the whole year, just kind of broke down to little parts to focus on throughout the year.
Right.
Some of the PD time, we'll get into this. We had PD time in all of our buildings as well that we as LIS people decided how we were going to utilize some of that time with our staff depending on what their needs were. And so we facilitated some collaboration with staff, and Nina's going to talk about a little bit of the K2.
Yeah,
Or
so
4K.
just a few examples of just some of the ways you might see continuous improvement in Ben Franklin and in Shady Lane. A part of, like Angie was just speaking to, a part of the professional development, isn't just sit in the gym and get some information, but get in a small group and have some time to visit each other's classrooms, ask each other questions, see how a different teacher in the next grade up or the grade below you is approaching the same work and the same concepts. And then as they visit and chat, but then they also shared out some of the examples that they were seeing from each other's colleagues. And so these were just a few of examples of the various 8 components and how they might look in different classrooms.
And the same for 3-5. You see the example of that mission statement on the left, that black background, that's kind of the whole class year-long goal that's posted in the classroom, kind of, this is our goal by the end of the year. I was invited into some classrooms to be part of those conversations with some of our newer teachers who said, can you just do this for a minute so I can hear what that sounds like, how you talk to kids about this kind of stuff. And after I was done, they're like, oh, okay. They make it sometimes a way bigger deal in your head than it really sounds like, which was so fun. It was so fun for me to go back and do some of that with them. So I love those invitations. And bottom is kind of that one with the big yellow unit 1. Teachers having kids look through their like unit assessment and do some highlighting, like what parts went really well for me, what were the areas I'm gonna still need to work on. Again, just that link, the impact that has on a kid understanding, this is what I can do, this is the part that's tricky for me, and that just increases engagement too, and being an owner of your learning, really, and that you can drive some of this work. The orange background, that's a teacher's room we were in, and again, we did some like field trip around to each other's classrooms and that's like my favorite thing is eavesdropping on those conversations that teachers are having, like tell me more about that. Oh, so then you had parents, this one in the orange, like parents, they took home their assessments, parents had conversations with students, like what do you think a good next goal would be? And then the kids came and put their name by what they had decided they wanted their goal to be, and those things, just really neat stuff to see. Then we've got some specificity down in the right-hand column, a teacher who was really explicit, this is what we're working on, and this is how you'll be able to show me you really understand it. So kids know what I'm expected to do and how I'm gonna show my understanding. What does proficiency look like? What do I really need to be able to do? And that clarity really helps, again, increase student engagement in the work when they know exactly what they're doing and why they're doing it, besides just, my teacher told me to.
Right.
So this is North. I went a little rogue instead of giving classroom examples because, we were doing our slides. I'm like, I have them, no, there's proof, like, North is rocking it. Like, they're doing a great job with, with their boards and everything you're seeing with the charting and the plus deltas and all that. So I went with the idea that obviously it's embedded in all of our work, everything we do. We had the pilot, one of the big things about continuous improvement is in order to improve, you need feedback from those closest to the work. What's the feedback? Does it make sense? Is it an improvement? Yes or no? So this is just showing that when we did the pilot, we gave weekly surveys to our teachers to get their feedback. We gave a parent survey on both social studies curricula, and then we also got our students, we asked for student input. So that's on the left-hand side. And then on the right-hand side was spoken about with Angie and Nina, which is perfect, with the template, the UBD, the understanding by design. That again, this is so much a continuous improvement in the sense of it's clarity for all teachers, they're on the same page. Here's our objectives, here's our essential questions, here's some of the important vocabulary. It just is a powerful, powerful tool, which lends itself to, again, the components of continuous improvement.
So then at the high school, this is an example, this was my first year at the high school, so each quarter I did quarterly one-on-one check-ins with each teacher around 2 components. But it was a great time to build relationships along the way and really get to know where each of them are at. And we have a lot of new staff at the high school, but then a lot of veterans. And so it was great conversations around just what Angie was saying about where some teachers that have been around for a long time as I have, and where they're like, Lynn, I got this, I know all this, blah, blah, and they pull out, slides of it. And so we had really nice conversations around, but what really works for you? Let's focus on that, because I do believe I've helped shift some mindsets from that compliance to like, let's really make it work in our classrooms. And at the high school, one of the biggest ones is you might see it posted a little bit more on bulletin boards and things like that, but at the high school, a lot of it's electronic and it's on their slides. And so it's pulled up for a few seconds as they discuss it and then put away. So then we did mimic what elementary had done, which was at the end of each semester we did some PD, and at the end of the year, about a month ago, I put the teachers into different groups and with heterogeneous departments, and they went around and showed their most proud. And then if you slide to the next picture, they took pictures and they put them into a Padlet. So this is one screen where I could scroll up and down on every of the 8 components. And we have all these examples throughout the high school that they shared with each other. I picked these 4 just because the first one with the mission, I just want to show how it ties into everything we do. The anti-bullying task force of the students this year came up with engage, empower, excel as our big theme across the high school. A lot of teachers use that, and the kids said, we want that in our mission, and then they built their missions with that in mind. So with the ICANNs, that's just an example there of how they use it in, I would say 95% of the teachers have their ICANNs on the beginning of every lesson that they teach. And we talked about the Brian Goodwin with the dual coding to get it from short-term to long-term memory. It really is important that they see it and they hear it. And prior to the conversations this year, a lot of teachers like, I say it. And so we had conversations about that where it's really important that they see it as well. And some teachers still have it posted on the wall, others do it electronically, and that's where everybody makes it work for them. The third one there is the Phi Ed department. That's where we had a school from another district come to tour, and they actually, the Phi Ed department chose to share them all about their continuous improvement. They're one of the strongest departments in implementing it to fidelity all the way to that individual student level. And then the last one there, is Scott Eldridge there with the math. He does a great job of really having it visible with the data on the wall for the results. And again, a lot of teachers do it digitally. They do different types of graphs to share it with the class. So that was just, I guess one of my most proud, since that's their most proud, my most proud is that one of the goals that Dan had for the building this year at the high school was that the teachers increase the Phoenix Time intentional invite so that because right now kids can sign up, right, when they go in, but he was trying to increase that the teachers would look at data, determine what students specifically needed supports, invite them in, prepare for it. So we combine that's a small PDSA. And so every conversation that I had that quarter, we discussed that and the numbers did double. So,
Okay, yeah, I know that we were working on that.
Yes, double is a great,
yeah.
just.
It was a building full, all the teachers, everybody,
then that's what you're gonna.
and every teacher had their goal on that same prize, so, yep.
As a part of this year's rethinking of continuous improvement, way back in August or July, whenever we first kind of were sharing out the plan for the year, we spoke about how we would have baseline data and then mid-year and end-of-year data. And so we did follow through on surveying all of the staff at all levels of the building. And we focused on, we did have the survey in all areas, students, teachers, and teams. But for this year, year one, we focused on the teacher full implementation. And so at the beginning of the year, you can see that beginning of the year column and then end of year. Those first 4 components, that was over semester 1. And then we brought in semester 2, moving into the second chunk, components 5 through 8 with the PDSA cycles. And so you can just see that from beginning of the year, full implementation until end of year, very large gains of teachers fully implementing that and having awareness and utilization. So that was really great because as they have more focus and knowledge and comfortability and understanding, they're then able to bring that to their teams, which strengthens their team dynamic, as well as bring that to their student. And so we felt like this was kind of the first piece that then will ripple out in these coming years. So moving forward, we will continue, all 8 components of continuous improvement will still be there and be a part of our process. But for next year, we're going to shift a little to focus more on the teams. This pairs nicely with the new curricular resources. So as we're bringing in these new resources, everybody, brand new or veteran, new to a grade, been in a grade for 50 years, this is brand new to everybody. So this is a perfect opportunity for everyone to get on the same page with what's the teaching, what's the learning, how do we know students are demonstrating proficiency in this, what are we gonna do if they don't, how are we gonna switch and tweak, how will we make things better for next year, all the aspects of continuous improvement, so it's a perfect opportunity to bring those together and to really have that continuous improvement process in action with our teams. And so that's our focus for next year, while we'll still have all 8, but we'll just kind of go a bit deeper into that. More opportunities for colleagues to grow and share and collaborate, that it's really important that they're gaining and growing their professional knowledge in their professional learning community with their colleagues, not the sit and get, but the boots on the ground. And then continued professional development and support from colleagues as well as support from us. So that is moving into next year, kind of where we've been this year, and then how we're taking it the next step deeper next year.
Yeah, very good.
Thank you, very thorough.
Yeah, exactly, it's a great update. I like the mindset shift, because that is something that then it becomes habit, you're not thinking about or choosing, it's just, and when everybody has that same mindset, it multiplies that, so.
Just becomes that culture of the team, it's just how we do business, we don't.
Exactly, it's just how.
Technically baked in.
Well, is that a country?
Should be baked in.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Everything we do.
And that's where I think sometimes helping teachers like I felt like some of my work this year is helping teachers recognize like you just did it. Like, you know, that it's not
You are already doing
so
your
much
job.
of it we kind of do a lot, or with like some of our new resources, there's some things built into there that will help facilitate some of that.
And I think teachers are the hardest on themselves, so that was some conversations I had when we would look at how they filled out the survey, and I was like, I'm just curious, cause you showed me this, you're doing all these things, but I did do this one little thing, I'm like, oh. Oh my goodness, like, they're their hardest critics to themselves, so.
Sure.
Wanna leave room to keep growing.
Everybody growing every day.
Thank you
Well,
so much.
thanks, you're welcome,
Yes,
appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Yeah, very nice job.
Next up. Committee calendar.
Checked a lot of things off and some things still to go, so I'm gonna get to June here.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.
Let's see where we are in June, so got a couple things on hold and we will bring those back as we are able. And I know we have our combined policy C&L meeting at the end of the month to talk about policy. And I think talking about that curriculum renewal cycle, I have a draft, but I based it on the current policy. So I'm wondering if it makes sense for us to either look at it at the same time or for me to make some updates after we kind of tweak our policy. So we can certainly talk about that.
Okay.
Also, we have a request for reconsideration for a supplemental material. So I have, I'm in the process of gathering dates from everybody. You should have an email from me regarding dates of availability. So as soon as we
I filled it out.
yeah, perfect. And that's okay. It came out today. So as soon as I have all of that, I will let you know what options are.
Okay.
So there are a number of people to coordinate with that, but that's a supplemental material. So.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's.
So I see the list here, you know, at the, for the additional topics for discussion. I did wanna add the world language in elementary on there. I know it was mentioned a couple times, but I think it keeps getting maybe dropped off just by happenstance. But I would like to see, you know, I remember one of the teachers, when I asked, you know, like how many barriers do you see and can this happen? Just some more information on, you know, is this possible? If so, what does that look like? Would we need to hire another,
Is that part of strategic plan?
I think that's where we were thinking that it might go
Okay.
first.
That would be the
oh, it's gonna
five-year-
be in strategic planning first,
Well, that would be part of the
because
discussion.
obviously curriculum is,
Yeah,
It should be part, I think that should start there first,
okay,
right?
because I think in my mind, it is kind of stages to do research about what does that look like? What does it take to do that? Like, what are the resources needed? Like, looking at what some other programs are in different places. And then, you know, bringing back some of that information, and I think it might be a small team of people, so I guess from a strategic planning standpoint, it could be an action step that might be.
Is that staff?
Like how much what could be the projection, how many years ahead if we shoot for it,
right,
goals?
how to meet,
how to budget
that.
for
So
it,
I see a number of
Scheduling,
actions, yes,
All that stuff.
yeah.
yeah.
okay,
Like, yes, you would have to look at the elementary school day
To get
and where would we fit that in?
Size, where do they go? Class,
Right,
I mean, like
yeah,
elementary,
just I
just in the
think
same classroom,
yeah.
but
So
I guess that would
again,
be that
but I
deal.
think that was where our initial conversation
Okay.
was, like to start hopefully surfaced in the strategic planning process, and then we would,
But I like it, I think it's a good idea.
Me too, I think
I
it's a
want
great
STEM
idea.
in there too. I want
Yeah.
STEM and foreign language in
Yeah.
elementary. I think
That would
that's
be a good
important.
place for action steps
Important
in regards
exposure, you
to
know.
the languages.
Sure.
Because then we could, set it up over multiple years and say, okay,
Right,
that's 30,000 feet, let's,
You can research,
instead
you know,
of
other.
implementing something that we're not ready for, do a study. There's any number of different steps that I can think of that, talk to the parents.
I just think that, there's so much science there, as we've talked about, just with
STEM and
how
We're gonna need a
amazing.
really long school day. I love it.
Right, we need more music programs too, no, I'm just kidding.
And then priority wise,
You're like, whoa.
literacy is obviously the first priority.
Yes,
Correct.
You know.
I definitely
that
agree with you there.
Language doesn't
Questions.
confound necessarily, I think the
but I beg to
research has
support, but
changed.
I beg to differ though also too, because I learned both languages at the same time, so
Yeah.
it's not like hindering, which the argument used to be.
Well, I think the research did change,
Yes.
right?
One
Yeah,
language
well, and
They
that's
used
one
to
of the
say-
pieces when
The
you bring
immersion
out
schools,
the,
that's,
bring out some research
So
and have
how they
have
work.
people look at, so
Right.
yeah,
And I'm not
I
suggesting
can come
that
up with a
level,
whole
but-
list of
Yeah.
action steps, so
Yeah.
but I
Exactly.
do think it's a multi-year process, so I would
Absolutely.
like to wrap it into strategic plan if we can, and if it doesn't surface there, then yes, let's bring it back here and just think about, what that might look like.
My question
Over
is
time.
too, where do you foresee addressing gifted and talented?
So with the pilots, the two GT coordinators have been Shelley Wolf and Nina Overholzer, and with the pilots, we didn't get as far in that as we wanted to, but they did have the opportunity to attend some ongoing professional development this year, and so as well as do research from other districts. So that's something that I think we'll pick up here. We may be able to pick it up this summer.
I almost feel like that's like a mini strategy. I guess we have it up and running, so.
So yes, we do have things in place, but I think there's an opportunity for a lot more. It's just a matter of, there's also some shifting philosophy and some shifting practices as we looked across the state at different districts. We used that benchmark list to kind of interview some people and get some different things. I also have a contact now who could maybe come in and do some consulting. So I think it is gonna, it's
We're
a
getting the
little
ball
mini project.
rolling.
The ball is definitely rolling, it's just not rolling
What
as
about,
fast as I thought it might.
Curriculum, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
No.
curriculum information on the website, are we gonna discuss it? Oh.
So we certainly can discuss it with that template that
I
you've
saw
seen
that.
a
Yeah,
couple
it's
times
great.
now,
I like it.
that's our starting point
I like it.
for that and would be a piece that we
Yeah.
could put on the website. So at this point, I haven't asked teachers to go back and do old curriculum,
No.
but with ELA, with science, with social studies, we have invested in some summer curriculum hours for them to get started on that work,
Nice.
and then they will work on that during the school year as well. So
Thank you.
I envision over time that becoming a possibility, it's just gonna take some time. But that's part of, it's a two-pronged, well, it's probably three. I really think it's good practice, for teachers to go through that process. But it also, when you have multiple instructors for a course or multiple teachers at a grade level, it helps create that consistency.
That's what I was
And
gonna say, I would think that it's helpful for the teachers as
Yeah.
well as, transparency for the parents.
Definitely, but
yeah.
then can be a piece that we can
Yeah, I
make,
like it.
some or all, public. I wouldn't put, the links to the assessment on the website.
No.
But so we can be strategic about what's most appropriate, but I think that's our
That'd be
starting
great.
point because we have not had that consistent template for everybody to use, and I think that consistent template is important, not only for teachers but for parents, so that you know what you're looking at.
That sounds like some of that's happening organically now
It
too,
is.
with all of the
Yes.
new
So-
curriculum coming
Yes.
and, wanting to make that again, more of a standard, so.
Yes, so
Yeah.
we've been working on that kind of
As
behind
they're
the scenes
unpacking.
for a
Right.
while, and we had to come up with some template to get people started.
Got it.
So it is happening.
Because of that, do we need to solidify that and have a policy for that?
Or put that
Curriculum,
within
or put it
policy.
somewhere.
So
Okay.
it would
We do have policy for curriculum, adoption,
probably be in our curriculum development policy.
Okay.
so we need a
don't
think
know
about
if the form needs to be necessarily, but it's embedded, I think, in our process.
Could be an exhibit.
It could be an
Like a
exhibit.
development, right? I just wanna make sure that we keep that on the radar to make the correction or
So
Streamline,
necessary
yeah.
That's
changes.
I have a
part of our
policy file,
June
just jump in.
27th
Gotcha.
work, right?
Yep.
Curriculum
That's-
development.
So we have 4 policies, curricula, I won't be able to read them all right now because it's
Yeah.
almost 8 o'clock, but
I know.
adoption, development, evaluation, and something else. So there are 4 separate pieces that I think we can streamline
And then maybe supplemental too? Or I'm sorry, I was just talking about that meeting.
For sure.
But you were just talking about the curriculum, so.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Curriculum development.
Curriculum development.
Yeah, so I thought that
There's
was the purpose of our
Yeah,
June
sure.
27th meeting to talk
Yeah.
about that, yeah.
Yeah.
So we could certainly roll, that in there somehow.
Alright.
I like it.
So,
Okay.
I would also say that, personal finance, we
Oh,
are
yeah.
currently working on, Lisa Kiefer and I attended a workshop recently about the updates to the policy. So we are working on evaluating our curriculum and that will happen through the summer. The requirement, it starts with next year's freshmen and our kids take that class as 11th graders or 12th graders, so we've got a little bit of time. So we're gonna give ourselves, because nobody will be taking it in the fall. So we've got a little bit of, we're gonna give
Wow,
ourselves
you
a
have a good cushion there.
yeah, we don't wanna use the
And
whole
you already
cushion,
have
but we're
something
gonna.
in place, so you're just
we
making
do.
sure you,
Right,
you
all
check
those
We're in a
the
really
boxes.
good, we're in a really good place.
Yeah.
We're gonna,
Important class.
That's
too.
great.
yes,
It is.
and I
And maybe
love
things,
the
more
fact
things to be
that
added,
we
yeah.
teach it at the later stage when kids are more likely to have their
Have
own jobs and
Yeah.
earning their own money. I think it's just more relevant.
Credit card?
Yes, one of the things we learned was there are some places where kids take it as 8th graders in the summer and it just doesn't resonate the same
No.
way. So I think we have a lot of good things happening with that, so we'll come back
Yeah.
with an update once we've had a chance to really look at that class, but that's probably not something we're gonna plan to do this summer.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
So, we got some time.
Any other thoughts or questions or anything you wanna share? You're good? Okay.
I think so.
Alright, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Wait,
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry, did I miss?
are we saying that sorry, just for my clarity, are we saying our next meeting is the joint?
It is the joint meeting unless we
Oh, yeah,
arrange,
That date
for,
for,
yes.
so it's kind of up in the air, we can maybe cancel
cause
it.
I was still,
Yes, so I
I'll
don't
put it on my
anticipate, unless everybody's available for that June 13th meeting, to use that for the reconsideration,
Okay,
I don't think we're gonna need it.
okay, alright,
Cause I don't think we'll be ready on
So
the
it's
Educator
tentative
Academy
at this
updates,
point.
as
Okay.
much as I'd like to be, I don't.
So the 13th meeting is.
On hold,
I'm not saying it's a point.
because
alright, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I will motion.
Oh, she was first, okay, you're.
I'll second.
Okay.
I'll do whichever the other.
Uh-oh.
Okay, Sarah's first, Nina's second.
Thank you.
Alright,
the teacher
all in
looked there.
favor? Aye. Alright, sounds good. I don't have to say the opposed, do I? 'Cause I
Here, I mean, that's.
I know,
Gross.
I know that. I'm just